radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 6 o'clock, Donald Trump says everybody loves the first phase of a peace plan in Gaza, which is currently being discussed by the Israeli government.
We ended the war in Gaza and really, on a much bigger basis, created peace. And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace. Gaza is going to be slowly redone.
A ceasefire could begin within 24 hours with an exchange of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners following on Monday or Tuesday. Former DJ Tim Westwood has been charged with rape and sexual assault. The Met Police says the 68-year-old is accused of offences against 7 different women over a period of more than 30 years. He's previously denied inappropriate behaviour. Madeleine McCann's sister has told a court a woman claiming to be her missing sibling played with her emotions. Julia Van Delt from Poland is accused of stalking the family, which she denies. And pubs in England and Wales could stay open for longer, and it could be easier for them to host live music. Downing Street starting a review of licensing rules. It could include premises not having to publish licence applications in local newspapers. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 39 points at 95.09. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.15. LBC weather, light rain moving in from the west across the northwest tonight. Windy in the north, lows of 4 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. It's 6 p.m. Now, Tonight with Andrew Marr.
Good evening. What is peace? We know what a ceasefire is. Speaks for itself. Very soon the last hostages may be released and the IDF may withdraw to the agreed lines, and that would be wonderful. But peace is more. Peace is tolerance. Peace is acceptance. Peace is live together. Peace is when Palestinian Muslims accept that Israel exists as a haven for Jews all around the world and will carry on existing. Peace is when Israelis understand that millions of Muslim Arabs have the right to live peaceably all around them, and that that land was not doled out by Yahweh thousands of years ago. So although we talk about a peace deal, truth is, peace can't be handed down or negotiated or given away by diplomats and foreign prime ministers around a table in Cairo. It's inside millions of people, or it isn't. And the hardest thing is that in this conflict and many others, peace also means deliberately trying to forget. Forgetting the murder and the maiming, forgetting the tangled, bloody histories. And I'm not saying that therefore peace is impossible. I'm just saying that it means something easy enough to say, but which I think most of us would find incredibly difficult to practice. I'm not sure I am big enough for what's now being asked of people across the Middle East. And if we're thinking of anyone in the days and weeks ahead, we should be thinking about the ordinary people now reaching nervously and with very mixed feelings for peace. So let us start tonight with peacemakers. Ramy Elhanan, an Israeli and veteran of the Yom Kippur War, whose daughter was killed by a Palestinian suicide bomber, is a member of the peace group Parents Circle, and he joins me now from Jerusalem. Very good to have you on the show. Can I ask you, first of all, for your own personal reaction for tonight's news?
Thank you, Andrew. I'm very pleased. I feel a sense of relief for the releasing of thousands and thousands of prisoners and hostages, Israelis and Palestinians. I think it's the first step forward, but it's not enough. It doesn't touch the essence of the problem. It doesn't touch the basic problem for which my daughter was killed.
Yeah, I was trying to make the point there that for peace to happen, Israelis are going to have to change their default view of Palestinian Arabs and vice versa. In your experience, do you think people in Israel are ready to change their attitude in a way that would start to bring about a lasting peace?
No, I'm afraid not really. We are suffering from two basic mental problems. One is the victimhood mentality that we carry on our backs, 3,000 years of victimhood. And the other is the Jewish superiority. Once we were able to put that aside and understand that from the river to the sea, everyone should be free and feel secure, nothing will happen. We have the same problem.
What did you discover? I'm sorry to jump in.
I mean, the conflict did not start on October 7th. It has a background. It has a connection. And we have to look forward and understand now that the problem is on the table and everybody is talking about it after so many years that it was pushed under the carpet. What are we going to do in order to prevent the next 7th of October?
Absolutely. You reached out very bravely to Palestinians who had lost children as well, and you have built bridges. What are the lessons you've learned from that you would like to pass on to fellow Israeli citizens?
That peace is possible, that peace is inevitable, that nothing you would do will bring back your daughter. As many people as you kill, she will not come back. And the pain will not go away. The only way is going forward. We look at the Irish people, and it took them 800 years to get to the agreement. They don't like each other very much today, but they don't kill each other. I'm going to Ireland tomorrow for a set of about the book, a Paragon about us. And I hope to find ears that will understand that the future is much more important than the past.
You've travelled, as you say, to Ireland and many other places in pursuit of the Parent Circle peace campaign. If this works, this ceasefire works, there is going to have to be a leadership role for people trying to advocate for peace, both inside Israel and in the Palestinian territories. And that's going to be very difficult indeed. Is that a job that you are prepared to help shoulder?
All I can do, I'm not a magician, I'm not a prophet, I don't have any moral authority, but the fact that I lost my daughter. And I'm in a position to tell my people and the other people that we tried everything to kill each other and to humiliate each other and to do whatever atrocities we can do. It will take us, Jews, generation to overcome what we did in Gaza. But the only way is looking forward. The only way is understanding that we must be equal, that we must have equal rights, that we must respect each other, because without respect, nothing will happen.
Many Israeli citizens are deeply upset about what the Netanyahu government has done and how they have prosecuted the war. Do you think the time is coming soon when the Netanyahu government is going to be replaced?
I hope so, but Netanyahu is not the problem, and Netanyahu, the people that are going to replace Netanyahu are not better than him. The only thing is we need to do a restart. We need to redefine the reasons that we are willing to kill and die for. We have to restart like in a computer and understand that what we did in the past is not enough anymore. And we must find new ways in order to respect our brothers, our neighbors, are the people that live within us, and they will not go away, and we will not go away.
And does that mean that for the peace process to actually mean something, there needs to be a new movement, a new kind of politics in Israel to support it?
No, just we need to open our minds and understand that accords like Abraham Accords that are designed to put the Palestinians under the carpet will not work anymore.
Ramy Elhanan, it's been a huge privilege to have you on the show this evening. Thank you so much for talking to us. Now, on the other side of the fence, the Liberal Democrat MP Layla Moran has been observing the Gaza catastrophe with particular anxiety because she is the first ever British MP of Palestinian descent. I wanted to know, first of all, how her family regarded today's news.
We were chatting about it this morning. All of us are, of course, cautiously optimistic. I mean, today is a better day than yesterday. And boy, have we needed more days like this. So, you cannot diminish, much as it may stick in the throat, what Trump has done. He deserves the kudos that he is receiving across the world from world leaders, and I think quite rightly. But also there is a huge dose of, caution, worry. What next? We've actually been here before. You might remember tail end of 2024, we had a 2-month ceasefire pause, the Biden plan. It lasted 2 months and then it fell apart. So the details of how this then progresses from here is huge. But I'm thinking particularly, I mean, we managed to get our extended family out of Gaza. We lost one and got the others out. But, people have lost 50, 60 members of their families. This isn't going to bring them back. The hostages who have died, it's not going to bring them back. But it could be an evening where they, look across at their families, knowing that perhaps they'll meet the hostages who are alive. Again, maybe those children sheltering in tents in Gaza won't be struck by a missile overnight. I mean, actually, this is huge. And to the British Palestinian communities across the world, not just in Palestine, hopefully we'll sleep easier this evening. It's a very, very important moment. But we've been reflecting on the show tonight about the difference between a ceasefire, and pray God that's what we're getting now, and peace. Peace requires people to forget a lot of the history, forget a lot of the nightmare that they've been through on both sides. That's going to be something that takes a long time, and a lot of people will not be able to do. I think I wouldn't say it needs forgetting, but it certainly needs moving on, and it needs moving on out of trauma. And I think what I could characterize, and I've seen it from myself, my mother speaks about the trauma that she had in the 60s and 70s growing up, going to protests, then ending up leaving Palestine as a teenager. My grandfather spoke to me about it. My great-grandfather's diary wrote about it. It's a repeated generational trauma. And the same goes on the Israeli side too. And there are many who do want to try and move on, and who have tried to come together to forge a new path side by side. But those voices are small. So I don't think we will ever forget. And I don't think we should ever forget, in the same way that you wouldn't expect a nation state to forget its history. But this is a moment where actually, just for once, we're looking at the horizon, and we're not just looking at the devastation of the here and now. And I think we need to harness this energy. I would argue, by the way, Britain has a really critical role to play in this, and I don't think we should underplay our hands. People will know historically we had a strong role in the region, the British Mandate, but also the Balfour Declaration is held up by many Palestinians as being the start of this mess, not least because it did not protect, as it promised it, the rights of Palestinians. And that was in 1917. So we have a long-standing history in the region. And now is a moment where actually we could take a leadership role with some credibility, having recognized the state of Palestine just a few weeks ago, in forging that path forward. The British person who will probably have the most prominent role in the next phase is Tony Blair. How do you feel about that? I have to say, that is probably, in the conversations I've had with Palestinians who are not politicians but just are on the ground, I mean, they're pretty scathing about the role he played, or frankly did not play, as Middle East envoy. It was he was known for not having achieved very much, and didn't do a lot of the getting to know people on the ground. He did. People would characterize his time as Middle East envoy as having been spent in a hotel in Jerusalem rather than actually getting out and about and achieving something. So it's hard to understand exactly what role he can positively play now. Maybe he's learned a lot and has reflected. Liberal Democrats actually have called for him to come to Parliament and explain, perhaps to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, why him, why now, and what does he feel that he can do differently this time, given, frankly, the last time he tried to do this, he didn't achieve very much. And thinking about this transitional body, whatever it ends up being called, the other big criticism I hear a lot is that there are no direct Palestinian voices on it at all. I'm really concerned about this. I'm firstly very concerned that, Hamas have been the ones doing the negotiation. We have to be careful we don't conflate Hamas with the whole of the Palestinian population. And so often in this debate that has accidentally happened, when in fact it is the Palestinian Authority who should be the ones who are driving this forward. In Trump's initial, I shan't say plan, it was a wish list, the 20-point wish list. Actually, the PA being involved in that governing body was one of them, but that was rejected by Netanyahu, I understand, as part of these negotiations. That is a big mistake. And the absence of war is in of itself not peace. You're entirely right. The peace is the two-state solution as two countries living side by side, people in security and dignity. That is what we've been aiming for. That's all we've ever wanted. And if we are to achieve that, to have no Palestinians in those driving seats as we forge ahead seems nonsensical to me, and is doomed to repeat that generational trauma again. If we want to not have this happen to our children, looking at TV screens going, what on earth? Why? What did we do the last time to stop this? I think that's one of the key things that now needs to be enforced by whether it be America or other countries who can pull strings.
So we need a Palestinian population and a Palestinian leadership which accepts Israel's right to exist and to carry on existing as a haven for Jews.
Absolutely. And the PA has done for many, many decades.
And we need, on the other side, an Israeli government which accepts the inevitability and the necessity for living alongside millions of Muslim Arabs and other Arabs, in perpetuity. And it's those two big mind shifts that have to take place next.
Absolutely. And it's worth pointing out Netanyahu is not someone who has accepted a two-state solution for a long time. I mean,
absolutely not, yeah.
Because there are quite significant forces, both on the side of Netanyahu, who, let's remember, once this peace plan, hopefully, or whatever we want to call it, ceasefire happens, he's going to have a lot of pressure to go to elections, which he's likely to lose. On the other hand, you have Hamas, who have gained legitimacy from their violent means, who are backed by Iran, who feed off this conflict in order to promote their own political legitimacy in their own countries. These are powerful, powerful forces in the region. So we are in a very precarious point. And I don't think that should be underestimated in how we move forwards now.
That's a good thing to remember on this historic day. Layla Moran, thank you very much. And by the way, congratulations on the baby. See you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Take care.
Well, coming up, I'm going to be joined by the Palestinian ambassador on what this peace deal really means for the Palestinian people. Will Gaza be rebuilt? And what's the next phase of the deal? But the time now, 6:16.
This is LBC.
Fraud can happen faster than you think. But at Barclays, we use innovative technology that spots fraud in under a second. And our dedicated team of experts work 24/7. So you can go about your day knowing we never stop working to keep you and your money safe. Search Barclays Fraud Protection to see how you can stay one step ahead. Barclays, make money work for you.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group clinics with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Play Set for Life from the National Lottery. Winners get 10k every month for 30 years. You could win on repeat. Set for Life. Play now on the National Lottery app. Terms, rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
At Amazon, over 50% of deliveries now come with less packaging or with no added packaging at all. It's a difference you'll notice on your doorstep, where you chat with friends, where your neighbour's daughter practices guitar, and where we deliver your new noise-cancelling headphones in the manufacturer's packaging. Much better. Reduced packaging from Amazon. We're delivering change where it matters, on your doorstep. Based on 2024 UK and EU Amazon packaging data.
Tonight with Andrew Marr. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app.
6:18. Right, let's turn to the immediate agenda. The timescale for troop withdrawals and hostage releases and all the rest of it. I'm joined now by the international affairs journalist and global podcaster Mark Urban. The next moment, I suggest, is the Israeli cabinet, which we hope votes to ratify the deal this evening.
Yes, and one of the ministers on the far right of that cabinet has been suggesting that he won't. I think probably Benjamin Netanyahu was fairly confident that he could get this through as a hostage release plan. And so something which seemed in its first revelation, this 20-point plan, to be a continuous and seamless thing, then begins to be broken into chunks. And so the question will be, if the Israelis think they can get the hostage release bit through, but not the rest, does it start to run into trouble? But let's travel optimistically and assume that we get effectively a ceasefire. We get quite a limited pullback of the Israeli military in Gaza. They hold something like 60% at the moment of the territory of the Gaza Strip and will pull back to about 50%. And then around Monday, the exchange should happen. Hostages on the Palestinian side, prisoners, including some life sentence Palestinian militants being released from Israeli jails, about 1,200, we think.
And there is a hard deadline on that happening, Mark, yes?
Yes, well, it's supposed to be, yes. I mean, I think, quite honestly, I think the two sides have committed themselves to this first element of the plan. So even if there's a last-minute wrinkle, I think we should still expect it to happen.
And beyond that, we start to talk about the Israeli military pulling out of all of Gaza, and then some kind of new force coming in to oversee Gaza, but without a direct Palestinian Gazan input.
Yeah, I mean, once you start to get beyond Monday, we hope, with the exchange, you start to get into really much more difficult political territory. The Israeli military agreed to a phased withdrawal. So they've got, I believe it's 3 lines on the map.
Yes. Yeah.
That they withdraw through those stages to the borders of the Gaza Strip, eventually, if it all goes well. But of course, part of that is they want to get Hamas to stand down, to relinquish power. And by the way, all the Arab governments, including Egypt, Qatar, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, that signed up to this as well, also want Hamas to stand down. But then the question emerges, well, won't there be a bit of a power vacuum? And I think, to be candid, I think having ruled by coercion as they have, some of these Hamas cadres will be very worried about Palestinians with feuds or blaming them for various things.
Grievances, just turning on them.
Yeah, grievances will start to have a go at them. Now, this then gets to the other issue where Hamas is saying, we need to keep our guns, effectively, because that's essential to the stability of the Gaza Strip. So in many other situations that we've seen before, like the Balkan ones, what you would do is put in some kind of force, an international force, to hold the ring while you worked for a new political settlement. Now, once again, that's looking tricky in certain respects. The Arab governments are not fooling themselves over to send thousands of police or security forces or even military there to do that. It could be very dangerous. Clearly, you could end up piggy in the middle between the Palestinian militant factions and the Israeli military.
Mark, the Nobel Peace Prize announcement is imminent, and there's been a lot of derision of President Trump around the world, a lot of mockery of the kind of vanity of a guy saying, I'm going to get this peace prize, I'm bringing peace here, there and everywhere. But isn't it also true to say that personal, very personal motivation from Trump has been a decisive factor in getting him and the White House to push Netanyahu to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember back in the day, at the end of the 90s, Bill Clinton was putting enormous effort into trying to get a final status deal on the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. And I can remember people saying, he just wants the Nobel Peace Prize. And I used to reply, well, if he succeeds with this, he'll deserve it.
I think the same this time for Trump. If he gets it, he deserves it.
I think the chattering classes in our country or much of Europe would want to deny him that. But look, I think the truth is, it is fascinating that the hostage families, Israeli hostage families, wrote to the Nobel Committee asking them to consider Donald Trump for the Peace Prize. It's felt he's not going to get it because all of that happened too late in the process. And as you say, the announcement is imminent, as well as whatever other issues they might have with his politics. But I think it is very striking that, you can say, well, he waited an awful long time before becoming really deeply engaged in this. But once he did become engaged, he's achieved something that, say, Joe Biden couldn't.
I think that's fair enough. Mark, since we have you here, for your podcast, you've been digging into the Chinese spy story. Tell me what you discovered.
Yeah, we've done an interview with Lord Mark Sedwill, who was the cabinet secretary in the last government, and he was the national security advisor as well. And he was therefore a person central to the formulation of doctrine or ideas about who are our adversaries around the world, the national security strategy.
Does he think that China is an enemy or an opponent or a foe, or does he not?
He says, that there's no doubt that China is a threat to this country.
Fascinating.
And he's very specific about that and about the intention in drafting this National Security Act to be able to deal with cases just like the one that collapsed recently.
Fascinating. That may cause Keir Starmer a little bit of trouble. Mark Urban, thank you very much indeed for talking to us tonight. So we've heard lots of different voices already tonight, but not yet an official Palestinian representative. So I'm delighted that I'm joined now by Husam Zomlot, who we can now describe as the Palestinian ambassador to the United Kingdom. Ambassador, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Are you convinced that as a result of this process, the Palestinian Authority will be in charge of Gaza properly?
It must be. There is only one authority and there is only one legitimacy, and the Palestinian people can govern themselves and must govern themselves.
Because even now, Mr. Netanyahu seems to avoid this.
Well, it's not up for him and to him. If it's up to him, he wouldn't have even signed on a first phase of a ceasefire. We know that he wants to continue the genocide. We know he wants to keep peddling, because the moment he stops peddling, all eyes will be on him and his responsibility, not only over the last 2 years of utter genocide, destruction, murder, starvation, but also in the years before it. All that policy that led us to where we are today. So we need to create the leverage, and I'm glad President Trump now is adding the leverage, is bringing the pressure together with our brothers and sisters in the Arab world, the leaders of the region. And also we have to remember that what defeated Netanyahu so far is the Palestinian people, the spirit of refusing to be killed in silence, the spirit of making sure that they will not be kicked out of their homes, and the British people and the people of the world who really told every government, including this government, that they must take action against Netanyahu and Israel to stop this madness and insanity.
However, does this mean it is over now for Hamas?
Well, it means it's over for genocide, and we have to make sure that, number one, we end the aggression, we end the war, all of it, not just phases.
I was asking about Hamas.
Israel is, Netanyahu has reneged on many. And then we move swiftly to making sure that Palestine is governed by one entity, one security forces, one law, one gun. And Hamas has already agreed in all these talks, including last night in Sharm el-Sheikh, that it will have no role in the governance of Gaza.
So to be absolutely clear, the leaders of Hamas may be in Qatar or somewhere else, but Hamas as an effective entity inside Palestine is out.
There will only be one entity now for an interim period. It's a technocratic government committee linked to the legitimate central government that will be in charge of the Gaza Strip. No one else has any role in the government of Gaza.
Where will the capital of Palestine be? Where will the centre of governance be?
Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem?
Absolutely.
So you'll be in East Jerusalem, and you'll have what people call the West Bank and the Gaza Strip all connected.
Absolutely. One territorial entity, one nation, one people, and one state that provides for its people and protects its people. And after the last 2 years, nothing we need more than protection and security.
I absolutely understand that, and a lot of help rebuilding.
Yes.
And on security. You talked about the spirit of the Palestinian people earlier. One of the things that's going to have to happen, if there is to be a proper peace, is that as the Israelis accept that the Palestinians have a right to live peacefully on their own land, and it's their land, so Palestinians are going to have to accept that the state of Israel, as a refuge for Jews from around the world, carries on ad infinitum. Do you think people are up for that? Are prepared to accept that after what's happened?
Well, Israel was recognized by us long ago, in writing, in 1993.
But that was before the last 2 years.
No, but you cannot unrecognize, you see. That's why what the UK did only a couple of weeks ago was an irreversible step. You cannot unrecognize. We have been very faithful as the Palestinian people and leadership of the very idea of ending Israel's occupation, of establishing a state of Palestine on the borders of 1967 with East Jerusalem as our capital, and resolving the other legitimate issues, including the issue of our refugees. Half of the Palestinian people, including myself and my parents, are refugees. So we have rights as per international law. So, no, we have been very faithful, but Israel hasn't. It has signed Oslo. We recognize they never recognized us, and they used the time of Oslo to quadruple the illegal settlements and to undermine any possibility of a two-state solution. So we should not talk about Israel's recognition or Israel's right to exist. We should talk about Palestine's recognition and right to exist.
So So in all of this new agreement, what is the future for the illegal Israeli settlers in the West Bank?
Ask the International Court of Justice that came out with a clear ruling only last July.
They're going to have to leave.
Absolutely. It's unlawful. It's an unlawful exercise. It's illegal to transfer the population of the occupying force into the occupied territory, stealing their land and their resources and building these colonial settlements. That's an unlawful act. It's a war crime, Andrew, and very well defined in international law. That's why the world judges, the International Court of Justice is the world court, came up with that very damning and clear judgment that Israel's presence in the occupied territory is unlawful. Its settlements are illegal and must be dismantled, all, including in East Jerusalem, and all third parties, including the UK government, must cease immediately to provide any material, political or legal help or support to these acts of illegalities. So for me, it's pretty clear, and I don't understand why are we still discussing it, Andrew? I mean, it's very clear. Occupation has got to go. Israel has got to leave. Leave us alone.
That's why I asked the question. I'm trying to work out, obviously, like most people, actually, who's winning here, what's going on here. Ambassador, I've interviewed you many times before. I have never seen you as happy as you seem tonight.
Relieved, because I am from Gaza, and it's been 2 years of hell. It's a nightmare to have to suppress your feeling of not being able to grieve, of feeling sad, because you know that your own family is being slain, is being slaughtered, is being starved, is being displaced, not once, not twice, not 3 times, while you see that the slaughter is happening in front of the world and nobody is able to do anything about it. And many of them are children, my cousins, what have you. Without going into details, there was such a moment when we couldn't process our grief, our trauma. And I think today I began to feel that I can begin, hopefully, inshallah, as we say in Palestine, inshallah, we will be able to start process collective
grieving and healing and beginning to bind the wounds.
Yes, it's very important. Yes, that process, I spoke to the BBC earlier about it. That process is very important. We must be given the space to be sad and to grieve.
I began the show, Ambassador, by asking about the difference between a ceasefire and what we're seeing now is the exchange of hostages and the exchange of prisoners and the IDF pulling back to various lines that have been agreed on the one hand and real peace on the other. Do you believe that what's happened today is the first step towards a genuine peace?
I believe it is the first step from the side of all parties involved, including, in my opinion, President Trump. I think he has been listening to the cries of the international community, to the Arab leaders and Muslim leaders, to the people of the world. He's seeing the millions upon millions, including in the US, by the way. This has become the largest and the longest protest movement for Palestine in the history of the international community, in the history of the US, in the UK. I am even absolutely astonished about the steadfastness and the willingness of the British people, not only to provide us with solidarity, no, joint struggle. And you saw what the British people have done. President Trump is finally listening and knowing that Netanyahu is taking all of us in a different direction. Now, the only one I doubt, and we all have to doubt, is Netanyahu. We must make sure that this unhinged person is brought to compliance, and the only way to do that is pressure.
Keep the pressure on. Well, what we know is that today was a better day than yesterday. Yes. Ambassador Zomlot, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us. Thank you. Up next, an overhaul of the housing market's been promised by the government with the hope of saving £700 for the average buyer. Will it work? Time now, 6:33, and Amelia Cox has the news headlines.
Israel's cabinet and security cabinet are widely expected to sign off a peace plan in Gaza this evening, which would see a ceasefire within 24 hours. It would be followed by the exchange of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners at the start of next week. Former DJ Tim Westwood has been charged with 15 sexual offences against 7 different women. The 68-year-old is due to appear in court next month and has previously denied inappropriate behaviour. And the sister, Madeleine McCann, has told a court she always knew a woman accused of stalking the family wasn't her sister. Amelie McCann says she found messages she received creepy and refused to do a DNA test because she didn't need to do one. LBC weather, light rain moving in from the west across the northwest tonight. Windy in the north, lows of 4 degrees.
This is LBC.
Julie could part exchange her car. Or check out We Buy Any Car. She could be unsure if she got a good deal part exchanging. Or have cash in the bank with more bargaining power to get a bigger car for her five-a-side team. Totally played. Or total player. To get a quote in 30 seconds, enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Looking for a fixed passive income backed by real demand? With ulesprosperity.com, you buy the car, we rent it from you for a set period. You stay the legal owner and we pay you up to £600 per month in fixed rental income. No hassle, no maintenance, no tenants. It's a straightforward asset-backed rental agreement. Visit ulesprosperity.com for conditions and to learn more. That's ulesprosperity.com. Simple, steady, secure.
How will you react if you win big with Win Plus?
I can't believe it!
Enter now at winplus.co.uk to get in the draw. 18 plus, GB only, T's and C's apply.
You know how fans shout at football matches?
Wake up!
That's because sound is the most effective way to tell the players they're rubbish. Works in advertising too. Because when you amplify your advertising using radio, your campaign is 49% more likely to get noticed. See radio differently at radiocentre.org.
Tonight with Andrew Marr. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
6:36, and so to a different subject entirely. Both Labour and the Tories are getting increasingly worried about the housing market and, in particular, the huge cost of moving. Labour's proposed a shift towards the Scottish system, tackling the frustration of gazumping by proposing binding contracts. And on the other side, Kemi Badenoch made the abolition of stamp duty a centrepiece of her conference speech yesterday. Let's talk now to Nigel Bishop, the founder and managing director of the Rococo property search company. Nigel, thank you very much indeed for joining me today. To what extent is the sheer cost of moving house, adding the stamp duty and all the legal costs and the uncertainty, particularly in England, gumming up the market?
Quite significantly. I think if you go back a few years, probably to the post-COVID years, the immediate post-COVID years, that's where concerns initially raised significantly more than they have in the past. And with costs increasing, stamp duty, as you've just referenced, is the biggest significant cost when you move house, not decrying the other costs, selling costs, selling agents, solicitors. When you buy, you have surveys. All of those amount to quite a significant percentage. Obviously, every property, I can't quote you specific figures because it's all property sales and purchases work entirely on values and commission. So it's all relative, and obviously then relative to the individual circumstances. But in each and every case, and particularly with older people, they are finding that these costs are sort of out of their comfort zone. Whether they can afford them or not, they're out of their comfort zone completely.
Well, that's what I'm really interested in, because in a properly functioning market, people getting higher salaries would perhaps naturally move to better properties, bigger houses, bigger families. You move to a bigger house. And then as you get older, you've got too many bedrooms and you downsize and you release that house for somebody else who needs it. My question is that ceasing to happen? Yes.
In many cases, it's happening because people, they are older. And I think also need to put into that factor that we're a population that's increasing in age. So people are fit and able, older than they were 20, 30 years ago, for instance. So they stay in these houses. And then the moment sometimes goes. I believe that if people move in their 60s or 70s, depending on their financial family circumstances, they can then move to somewhere new and maybe make new friends or move to where grandchildren are, etc. If you leave it a bit longer, people then, the practical side comes in and they just can't face dealing with it. That then impacts on the market as a whole, because that sector of the market is the sort of market where there are younger people coming up wanting to buy those houses. If the older people aren't moving,
It gums the whole thing up. I gather from what you've been saying, Nigel, that getting rid of stamp duty, if the country could afford it, as the Conservatives have suggested, would be a huge help. But can I ask you about the rather more complicated Labour or government proposal that we should move in England to the Scottish system, where you have much more transparency in deals. You know ahead of time what the chain is looking like. You know who's got how much money, and you make binding commitments to buy at a certain price. Would that help?
In theory, I think it will help. I still think that the personal, practical aspect of it will have a big impact on it. And bearing in mind, if we are talking more about the older generation, people sort of at least in their mid-60s, but more likely 70s and even the 80s, if people get to their 80s, then the reaction tends to be, well, we'll just sit tight. We can't deal with this. I think transferring to a better system is undoubtedly got to be a good idea. Mm-hmm. How you get from that transition from a legal process that's been in the system for decades, generations, to transferring it to a new system within the legal system and getting it through Parliament and everything else, I suspect will be quite a long time.
Well, as somebody who's bought and sold houses or properties in Scotland and in England, I can reveal the Scottish system is indeed much, much better, and I hope everybody can move to it. Nigel, for now, thank you very much indeed for talking to LBC. Our pubs, it's well known, are in trouble, 8 shutting every week. The government now plans to help them by extending opening hours, allowing more food to be sold outside and more live music. Should we welcome this as a long overdue return to our old traditions of merriment and feasting, saving institutions which are often the linchpin of our communities? Or is this an invitation to loud and loutish mayhem? Let's talk to Mike Kill, the CEO of the Nighttime Industries Association. Mike, thanks for joining me. Broadly speaking, is this something that you welcome?
It is, without a doubt, and I think we've got to put some context to this. This was born off a 6-week review where we worked alongside different stakeholders to look at recommendations in terms of trying to create a more permissive and enabling licensing strategy. Something that Tessa Jowell in the early days of 2003 set out to make this legislation work. And I think one of the challenges that we've had is it's eroded in terms of that position over time. So I think this is long overdue in terms of a perspective. It's not about ignoring safety or concerns around residential impacts, but what it is about is actually sort of looking at some of the challenges, the barriers, the timelines, and starting to look at growth and investment to try and reignite the economy, which I think we can play a big part in.
So on the live music side in particular, this is simply a way of getting more people into a pub on a quiet evening to hear a band or whatever it might be, make a bit of a bigger profit. Because in the end, the only way you save pubs is for publicans to make more money.
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, but let's be honest about it. I mean, the live music sector is challenged as well. And without a doubt, I mean, this is one of the non-fiscal pieces that many of us have been lobbying for. But let's not move away from the fact that the economics are still working hard against us. And it's not the silver bullet that's going to resolve things for the pub sector, the hospitality sector, or nighttime economy. So I think for us, this is one part of a very complex picture for our sector, which is challenging at the moment, alongside things like transport infrastructure, safety. But the primary issue we have is the economics. That's where we're really tested at the moment. And if the Chancellor doesn't do something to give us some financial headroom, the challenges will continue for us.
I go back to the old days of a pickled onion and a slice of elderly pie. But how much is food now very important to the economy of the average pub?
I think it's hugely important. I think we've got to recognise that, the audiences that we talk about have matured. Things like vertical drinking are a thing of the past. People want to go out and enjoy a social and cultural environment, and food is a massive part of that. We talk about street food as a big part of that Mediterranean sort of food and drink environment. So I think we're looking at an audience and people who want to go out have matured, their tastes, their palates, their expectation, their experience experience, whether we talk about provenance, whether we talk about sustainability, all of these things are really, really important to them when they come out. So I think when we talk about this, we've got to sort of refrain from going after it as this is going to be a problem, because I do believe that the audiences have changed and they are more mature. They've just got less money, which we recognise, but the desire to go out and enjoy community experience, social experience and cultural experiences are really important.
And briefly, is there a moment in the night when pubs, in your view, should all be shut? In other words, what about all-night opening and that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, we talk about 24-hour economy, but, you know, the commercials only stack to a point, and that's really relevant to market. You know, we talk about the cities that never sleep across the world, and London is probably the closest to it, but they'll only work to the infrastructure and the opportunities that are presented. So I think we're a long way off a 24-hour economy, but we have to recognise we have to give them every opportunity to start to move from a survive attitude to a thrive attitude, which is where the challenges lie.
Even in a city that never sleeps, some of us try to. Mike Gill, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Now, this week, the Tory party conference tried to shift the dial in their favour away from reform. Did they succeed? In a few moments, I'm going to be joined by my weekly political panel to reflect on that and much else. But the time now, 6:45.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
Finally, things are looking up in the Middle East. But will the peace deal hold? And can you get over your Trump derangement syndrome and give Donald Trump some credit for it?
Ian Dale on LBC.
Running a ceramic studio is all about balance, right, Nina?
Absolutely. That's why my business deserves the new iPhone 17 Pro. It can help me handle even the busiest workday, from planning my classes to keeping my kiln on track, so my business still holds shape.
The all-new iPhone 17 Pro as your work demands. Your business deserves the most powerful iPhone on EE, the UK's best network. BT and EE, better for business.
Verify at ee.co.uk/claims.
At TfL, we're helping make roads safer. We're continuing to roll out lower speed limits because 20 miles per hour roads have already seen 24% fewer collisions causing death or serious injury. We're also improving junctions to help keep you safe and improving visibility for our bus drivers with new wing mirror cameras. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Comparison of collisions data before and after implementation of 20 miles per hour speed limit.
This year, Amazon are increasing the electric delivery vehicles we use across Europe to 10,000. It's a difference you'll notice on your doorstep, where babies are made a fuss of, where we deliver footballs for kids' kickabouts, and where they deliver the football straight into next door's garden. Can I have their ball back, please? We're delivering change where it matters, on your doorstep. Delivery service partner vehicles across the UK and EU.
This is LBC. Message Andrew Marr on WhatsApp now on 0345 60 60 973.
6:47. It's been the final week of the autumn conference season, with the Tories up in Manchester, as well as the week, of course, of the Gaza breakthrough. Cascades of interesting stories, all sorts of question marks about the competing parties. So I'm delighted to be joined by my panel this week, featuring Polly Toynbee from The Guardian and William Atkinson of The Spectator. Welcome to you both. Polly, let me start with you. Two party leaders this autumn going into conferences looking pretty battered and beleaguered, and actually ending them looking in a better position.
Yes, they're both absolutely rock bottom. Well, I don't know, you can always go further, which is a fascinating situation to be in. But, they both made good speeches. Certainly it was Keir Starmer's best speech, and I think it was probably Badenoch's best speech too. So they've come out a bit better, but really conferences don't turn the dial very much.
William, what do you think about the great sort of strategic dilemma they both faced, which is, how do you deal with a man like Nigel Farage? Do you confront him directly and speak about him a lot, as Keir Starmer did, or do you try to almost ignore him, as Kemi Badenoch did?
Well, I think you can see the differing approaches from what they think is the best way of framing the next general election. So Kemi, I think, thinks the best way to basically deal with Nigel Farage is to paint reform as fundamentally unserious. If you want a right-wing government that's actually going to sort of clamp down on illegal migration, a right-wing government that's actually going to cut tax, you can trust the Tories to do that because Farage is fundamentally just a clown.
As long as you forget the last 14 years.
Well, exactly. And then Starmer's strategy suggests that in the next election, it's either me or Nigel Farage. If you stand up for a Britain that rejects everything that Nigel Farage stands for, then you're going to have to vote for Keir Starmer. I don't think either of their pitches were ultimately very convincing. I think both, as probably suggested, one of them a good day's headline, but now already Keir Starmer is having to bat up questions about, this collapsed China trial and the upcoming budget. With Kemi, people will be back talking about potential coups against her within a week or two.
I think that Keir Starmer crossed a very important bridge when he really took on Farage. I think it changed a lot of things. I think it showed that we are up against a real threat. And I think it was a great mistake of Kemi's not to have done that, because it's a real threat to her, but she needs to say this is a threat to the country. It's not just about callow politics.
I guess the pushback to that would be, somebody was saying, a pollster was saying to me this week, he said, look, Nigel Farage has put on something like 10 points since last May, and he hasn't really done anything. And he's going up and up in the polls because people like Keir Starmer keep keeping his name in the headlines and keep talking about him. There is that danger too.
I don't think so, because after all, Farage had the whole of the summer to himself, kept making phony announcements, things that are never going to happen, but nevertheless were eye-catching when there wasn't much else going on. Whereas I think he has to be taken very seriously. This is a real threat. It's happening right across Europe. These far-right parties are a great risk and danger, and unless conventional parties stand up to them, it's a real risk. We've been here before in ancient times.
Yeah. Let's turn to the Labour Party now, William. Without putting this too luridly, it seems to me that many of your colleagues have got something like a kind of serious political crush at the moment on Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary. They see her as the big, tough Terminator figure who really stands for an awful lot of things that Conservatives do.
Yes, I think Shabana is obviously an interesting figure. I mean, obviously sort of positioning herself on the right of the Labour Party. She said from a right-wing perspective, a lot of the right things on, whether that's sort of, I think she went through that brief phase where she was going to sort of castrate paedophiles, which I think is a bit too right-wing even for me. But she's also spoken at things like the sort of grooming gang. She's spoken about sort of supporting sort of various, trying to reduce illegal migration, etc. But again, I think we've been around the houses here before, we had sort of Wes Streeting as the flavour of the month about this time last year, and I imagine Shabana Mahmood will find the Home Office just as difficult to grip as all of her recent predecessors. And the conversation will be, in the same way, on the left, your publication was talking about Andy Burnham only 2 weeks ago, and who can now remember the abortive sort of Andy Burnham leadership pitch? Again, I think Shabana Mahmood will be
away. That's all I would say about that. But it's a fair point. It's
I'm not sure that Shabana's going to do all that well, because
I was going to ask you about her agenda, which is about not gutting, but certainly rewriting parts of Article 3 and Article 8 of the ECHR, albeit with a lot of European governments alongside her, and then looking again at the Refugee Convention. These are going to be issues that are very hard, not just for Keir Starmer, former human rights lawyer, but also for the Parliamentary Labour Party.
I'm not sure that there will be. I think if it's alongside other social democratic or indeed Christian democratic parties across Europe, I think everybody thinks there is something wrong with the ECHR. It's very different to saying we're going to do another Brexit. We're going to walk out all by ourselves. We're going to join Belarus and Russia. I mean, the Tory and Farage position is quite different. So I think that's acceptable. But, Labour always has to have a very tough Home Secretary. It had Jack Straw and it had David Blunkett, and their job was to be the mean backstop. Nobody had to like them.
I think also, obviously, sort of building on what Polly was saying, I think if, the unlikely event that Shabana Mahmood was able to sort of deal on the various things that made her popular with the right, that would understandably make her very unpopular with a lot of Labour members. There's a reason why, according to the Labour list polling, Ed Miliband is currently, I think, the most of the sort of candidates. The candidates who are actually in Parliament, the most popular sort of choice to be the next Labour leader. And I think sometimes those of us on the right, when we hear a Labour politician like a Streeting, like Mahmood, say things that we instinctively are quite sympathetic to, we can forget the internal dynamics of the party they're actually a member of.
Well, looking back at the entire party conference season, Wes Streeting, you've both mentioned him. I don't know if you saw his speech. I thought that was the speech of a future leader, if ever I've seen one.
Yeah, I think he's in a very strong position. I think he's moved somewhat to the left, which is interesting, because he was thought of as being something of a sort of Blair protege. And I think all of that's gone. And I think that he really is in pole position. And now that Angela Rayner is not there, I think he's the next choice.
I wouldn't write off Rayner, though. I would say that, her great benefit now is she's going to be out of the cabinet for, at least a year or two, and she can position herself as the queen across the backbenches,
Like Andy Burnham, like Robert Jenrick, like many other people, she's not going away. She's going to come back again, I think. What about the reform position? We haven't really talked enough about them. Now, I think I'm right in saying that pollsters believe that if reform is 2 points ahead of Labour at the next election, then they become the largest party. If they're 7 points ahead, they get an overall majority and can form a government by themselves. And they're, what, about the moment, 10 points ahead? So they are in very, very serious contention. William, your organ looks very closely at Reform and the Conservatives. Are you starting to see a drift, not just by one MP or one councillor here and there, but, as it were, the chattering Conservative classes moving from the Conservatives to Reform?
I think there has to be. I mean, I know a lot of, my contemporaries who a couple of years ago would have been thinking about sort of moving their way up through Tory world and hoping for that sort of eventual safe seat, and now moving en masse to Reform, because that's where the energy is. And I think it still remains the case that the next year's local election is going to be terrible for the Tories. They're going to be wiped out across Scotland and Wales. They're going to be wiped out across large swathes of England. And at that point, if you're both a Conservative voter and you're a sort of young and ambitious Conservative, or you're a Conservative hack, or any other person associated with Tory world, the writing is entirely.
If you're Danny Kruger, you've gone already.
Yeah, exactly. It makes sense to then get in with Reform. And I think a lot of what people are thinking at the moment is, what point do you jump ship? But, I've been a Tory all of my life. I've been a party member since, the age of 15. I'm not going to be defecting anytime soon. I don't think that's necessarily because of any instinctive loyalty to, say, Camille Badenoch's leadership. That's because I simply find Reform fundamentally unconvincing.
I think more than unconvincing. They are more hated than anybody else. That fascinating poll that showed that Farage up against any other leader, including Ed Davey, would lose, that people are strongly against him. And if it came to the real threat, I think there would be a national coming together of tactical voting to keep Farage out, as there was against the Tories last time.
You segue brilliantly for me, Polly, because you mentioned Ed Davey and the other party we really haven't talked about. Nobody talks about the Lib Dems, but if you look at the dynamics and the possibility of the Lib Dems doing another big jump forward and becoming a really serious party, a bigger party certainly than the Conservatives at the next parliament, is quite high.
Well, they deserve it. They've done incredibly well. He has an amazingly cheery demeanour when everybody else is glum and
depressed. Throwing himself into ordure-filled water and going around wheels and all the rest of it.
It seems to have sort of worked. People think it's ridiculous, but I think they're taken quite seriously nonetheless.
He puts a smile on people's faces.
And his politics are politics of hope and happiness. He's not dragged down by the gloom and doom. I think the fact that he's completely free to have quite different, not to feel he has to follow Farage and Tories into immigrant baiting.
One final person we haven't mentioned yet, William. How do you think Zach Polanski is doing as being, as it were, the left-wing answer to Nigel Farage?
Well, I think he's succeeded so far in seeing off what's his most obvious strategic threat, the sort of proposed Your Party of Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana. The fact that that's already dissolved into infighting, whereas Zach Polanski has merged now as sort of quite a charismatic, sort of social media presence, means that he's certainly sort of got a jump on them. Again, I don't think, the vast majority of the country knows who Zach Polanski is yet. And also, a bit like the Lib Dems, you have a fundamental problem within the sort of current makeup, the sort of parliamentary sort of constituency of the Greens, which is that, he's a man of the left, but most of the seats they now have were one off the Tories. And so how, if you're trying to expand to 8, 9, 10 sort of seats the next election, are you going to sort of cope with that dynamic? And I think it's a similar problem with the Lib Dems. It's very easy for Ed Davey to pose as the sort of, voice of happiness when most most of his constituencies are largely quite wealthy, and they're not the parts of the country that are currently suffering, and they're rejecting politics as usual.
All right. I think we have demonstrated beyond peradventure, as they used to say, that if you're interested in politics, there is no other show you really need to listen to. William, Polly, thank you both very much indeed. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news and opinion. You can put your news categories in the order you'd like them. You can pause, you can rewind live radio, and you can listen to a range of podcasts. So download the all-new official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 10 on LBC, it's Ben Kentish. But right now, it's time for Ian Dale.
Another show for political geeks, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed.
We reached a momentous breakthrough in the Middle East, something that people said was never going to be done. And I think it's going to be a lasting peace.
And can you get over your Trump derangement syndrome and give Donald Trump some credit for it? We'll continue the conversation at 9 and ask whether Donald Trump really could have a claim to win a Nobel Peace Prize. My guess is it won't happen when the 2025 winner is announced tomorrow, but if he manages to pull this off and then manages to bring an end to the war in Ukraine, surely he'd have a good claim. At 8, our Thursday